Good day, everyone. ASAE Business Services is pleased to present this online webinar entitled Mobile Email 101. Our speakers for the presentation today are Ron McGrath and Lydia Roberts. My name is Jeff Baker, and I will be the moderator for today's seminar. Today's presentation will last approximately 30 minutes and include a specific question and answer period at the end of the session. You may enter a question by typing it into the Q&A box on the lower right-hand side of the screen and clicking the call out button. These instructions will be repeated later in the program. You may also tweet your questions using the hashtag ASAEwebinar. If you have any technical questions during the event, please email support@HighRoadSolution.com. Today's webinar is being recorded, and all participant lines will be muted during the live program. Today's webinar is the first in the 6-part lunch learning series. Each 30-minute bi-monthly webinar will educate attendees on strategies and tactics to quickly boost email marketing performance for any organization. Lydia Roberts lends her technical know-how to HighRoad's team. Her degree in multimedia arts and sciences provided her with a wide array of artistic and programming skills. She has held positions as an art director, independent developer, and IT support. Lydia continually evolves her web programming skills and prides herself on keeping up to date with the latest web breakthroughs and trends, making your website or e-newsletter more efficient, enjoyable, and valuable to your business. Ron McGrath, one of the original founders and now HighRoad's Chief Technology Officer, specializes in bringing integrated messaging solutions, email, mobile, and webinar, to the association and nonprofit market. Ron has more than 18 years of experience developing and providing cutting-edge technology solutions to various markets, including the associations and nonprofits. A serial entrepreneur and featured speaker at conferences across the country on email best practices, Ron is known to have a talent for making complex technologies accessible and compelling. And now, I would like to turn the floor over to Ron McGrath.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar lunch learning series, Mobile Email 101. In today's 30-minute session, we'll be covering the why, the what, and the how of mobile email, and leaving you with actionable takeaways you can apply to your current email marketing program. So why take the time to build mobile-friendly versions of your email? Well, based on Gartner Group studies, within the next 2 years, people actually read more email over mobile devices than the desktop. If you look at statistical information available from email service providers in the space, you'll see over the last couple of years that Outlook has been the leading device for opening up and viewing emails. However, the second most used device isn't Hotmail, isn't Gmail, is actually iOS devices. Now, if we look at this data in a slightly different manner, broken out between desktop email clients, web-based email clients, mobile email clients, you'll see trends here in terms of there's a decline on the desktop and on the web, whereas there's an incline with mobile devices. Now, if we look specifically within the mobile section or space, you'll see that Apple devices actually have a large percentage of that market share. So over 85% of mobile views are actually done on iOS devices. So you can see right now that there are trends that are showing that more and more people are opening emails over mobile devices. You couple that with the fact that when email service providers serve service recipients of emails or members, and they've asked the question, if you get a mobile email that doesn't look good, what do? Over 69% of those people surveyed say they delete it, and 18% say they unsubscribe. And so you can see that it is really important to start thinking about how your emails look on mobile devices. So does that mean that you're going to actually have to build 2 versions of your emails? No. And that's what responsive design is all about. It's basically an approach to developing your email templates where you have one template, but it's going to look great on the desktop and also great on mobile devices. Lydia?
All right, thanks, Ron. Hi, everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about what responsive design is. It is an approach to web design where you only have one version of your site or your email, but the way that it gets applied to different devices is that it will have a layout that automatically changes its configuration based on the screen size that it's viewed upon. So there's no need for many different versions of a site or an email. We only need one version. This is something that started out just for web design, and then in the past couple of years, it's kind of moved into the email sphere. So the way I like to think about this is kind of like a t-shirt. If I had my adult-sized t-shirt and I put it on this little girl, it's going to be huge. It's not going to fit her. But what if I could take my big old t-shirt, put it on her, and it would automatically shrink down and the words would kind of reconfigure to look right on her smaller frame. That's exactly what responsive design does. It takes the one version of your email newsletter and it automatically reconfigures it for that specific device. So the goal with responsive design is to really provide people with a good experience on any device. But this doesn't mean that it's the exact same experience. Sometimes it may, it may look a little bit different on a smartphone versus a desktop, but it should always be easy to use. It should be intuitive for the user. So I want to start out by showing an example of a responsive website. This is not an email, but rather a web page. And on the left, we have the mobile view of this little cute panda article from NPR. And on the right, we have the desktop version. Now we can see over here on the right-hand side, there's this sidebar here for the desktop version. There's also this large gray box area that contains a lot of links and the title of the section that we're in. And this gray bar contains a lot of links as well and a little search button here. Now, at first, it kind of looks like all of that has disappeared over here in the mobile version. In fact, what's happened is that it's been incorporated into some little pull-down buttons here, this little blue box here, and this arrow here. And the sidebar content has actually been moved way down below the actual article, but it's still there. So you can see how a responsive web page has kind of reconfigured its entire layout. It's gone from a 2-column layout to a 1-column layout. Now here we have an example of an actual responsive email. The left is our mobile view once again. The right is our desktop view. I'd just like to point out a couple things here. On the right, we have our logo, and then we've also got a date. It's rather small, but we have the date of the newsletter over here, and we're going to look at that a little bit more later because you can see over here on the left, the date is gone. This particular email has chosen to hide the date. They just decided it wasn't important. They wanted the logo to stand out more. They've gotten rid of it. They've also removed this gray bar at the top here, which has some sharing buttons. But other than that, we've got all of our content. We even have this main image. It's been scaled down to fit. So really, it's the same content, but it's just working better for mobile. So now I'd like to show you a comparison. The left is our responsive email. The right is the same email, but it's no longer responsive. So this is really showing you a comparison of the same email, but one having been configured for mobile and one is not. So the left, you can see it's a lot easier to read. We really would not have to zoom in, pinch or zoom with our fingers to read this on an iPhone. Whereas on the right, I can kind of make out the headlines, but I really can't read the text. And if I were going to want to tap on any of these links, I would probably have to zoom way in and kind of scroll around with my finger to make sure I'm going to hit the right thing. So you can see how usability is really an issue here with responsive design. It's just going to be easier when everything has been configured for this smaller screen. Okay, so how does this actually come to pass? So every website and email is made up of HTML, which is our content, and CSS, which styles the content. It controls the colors, the sizes, the fonts, the spacing. And just like any other type of software, CSS has versions, and we're currently on the newest version. It's CSS 3, and CSS 3 has given us the @media query rule. Now, I like to think of this as, in Back to the Future, the flux capacitor makes time travel possible, right? Well, responsive design is made possible through the media query. The media query is great. It allows us to do just wonderful things with web design and email design. But unfortunately, it's still pretty new, so it's not supported across the board yet. It is supported by all iOS devices, which, as Ron was mentioning before, is the second most common way of opening emails. So that's great. We're covered there. It's also supported on the most recent Android devices, BlackBerry version 6 and up. But it's not completely across the board. One thing I wanted to mention is that the Gmail app does not support media queries. It doesn't matter what device you're on, even if you're on an iOS device, the Gmail app just does not recognize it, can't handle it. Hopefully in the next few years that will change, but that's how things stand right now. So I want to show you a little bit of this code, how this actually comes into play. This is what the media query looks like. It's in blue here. And you want to declare this in the head of your HTML document. That's at the top. And you can see that it's declared here by @media max device width 480 pixels. What this means is that any device 480 pixels or smaller is going to apply all of the rules inside of here. Now, if it was set up differently, we could actually say min device width 480 pixels, which would basically be the opposite. We would be starting out with a device of 480 pixels and then moving up. Anything that size or larger would get these rules applied. So there's some different ways you can do this, and you can also list out multiple media queries with different rules inside. I usually just have one for an email. I find that all you really need is the desktop version, which is going to look great on a tablet too, and then your mobile version. You could also remove the word device, and that would correspond to the screen width instead of the width of the actual device. So instead of the width of your physical iPhone, it would be the width of the screen on the iPhone. So there's several different ways of declaring this, and it's kind of up to your personal preference. I find that this right here works just fine, and I've seen this used in many different examples out there. So now I'd like to show you how this actually gets applied. You know, we could list out a bunch of media queries in our head of our document, but that wouldn't get the job done. It wouldn't actually do anything. I want to point out, grab my arrow here. We have our media query up here. Now, one of our rules is that if a table has an ID called table, then that table should be 300 pixels wide. Well, what I've done is I've added the ID of table to our main table that encompasses everything, our entire layout. So it's going to scale all these things down to 300 pixels when the device is less than 480 pixels wide. So that's kind of the first step here. The second step is what we looked at earlier, where we saw that the date of the newsletter was just gone. They had decided to remove that from their template. Obviously, we can't see it over here in the screenshot anymore. Well, that's because we've given it a class of hide. And we see that the class of hide, when applied to a TD or a table cell, essentially, gets a display none, which means it's not going to show. And briefly, the important here, this is important. This has to be here, otherwise certain email clients will not recognize these rules. Okay, so let's talk really quickly about some best practices. These are going to help you out no matter if you're doing a responsive email or not, but these are specifically meant for mobile in mind. We want to keep it to a single column layout, and for mobile, these are kind of the max widths that you want to stick with. I actually stick with 300 pixels as my max width because that's going to allow it to be viewed on the maximum number of devices. If you start, getting around 460 pixels, many phones are actually not, their screens are just not that wide. You can see here, there's just isn't room for a sidebar, so a single column layout is really the way to go. We want to keep our key information and call to action at the top. I really like this call to action button right here. It's nice and big, and we kind of know what's going on. We can still see the logo and main information, but we wouldn't even need to read this entire email to get the message across. Please keep your content concise. Having a lot of lengthy articles, especially on a mobile device, is just kind of frustrating to scroll through. It's hard to see all of the content at once. So if you can use teasers with a read more link to your website, that's a great way to solve that problem. We want to keep the fonts to at least 13 pixels. There's a couple different reasons why. First of all, it just helps readability. When you're on such a small device, 13 pixels is just a great size starting out. Another reason is that iOS devices natively, if they see a font size that's lower than 13 pixels, they will automatically scale it up. And sometimes it scales up a lot, and it can actually kind of warp your layout if you're not prepared for it, if your layout isn't kind of ready for that. It can kind of break your layout a little bit. And there is code that you can place into the head of your document that will prevent that from happening. So that is an option, and that's in our resources section. You can find that there. But in general, I believe that it's important to have this 13 pixel minimum font size. It just helps everybody out with readability. Touch-friendly buttons. You can see here, this is a pretty large button, and it's going to be easy to tap with my finger, and there's even a little bit of space around it, so we're not going to accidentally hit something else. And Apple recommends 44 by 44 pixels as a minimum area for a button. High contrast colors. This becomes kind of more important on mobile devices. This is just a good rule of thumb for any design, but some people choose to dim their devices to save on battery power. So if you can really kind of turn up the contrast and use really dark text on a light background, it just helps people out when their screen is already a little bit dim. And then it's just crucial to test your email, test your responsive email. Most importantly, to test across multiple email platforms, multiple apps, multiple devices, not just the one that your specific organization uses. Most emails are not going to be completely internal. Even if it was an internal communication, people are still using their smartphones with different apps on them. So it's not always going to be viewed in Outlook 2011 on a desktop. It's really important to test these. So that kind of wraps it up. Just to kind of take it away, basically we've talked about how No organization can afford to ignore this. This is not just kind of a fad. It's really where things are headed, not only with email design, but just the web in general. It's important to give users the best possible experience, no matter what kind of device they're using. They shouldn't have to sit down at a desktop in order to comfortably, get your message from your email. And of course, any email should really be about your specific audience and their needs, and what content is important to them. And when in doubt, just try to be mobile aware. Try to keep these best practices in mind. Even if your organization isn't quite ready to move into the responsive design sphere, you can still put some of these best practices into place, and you can still do testing. You can still think about, how is my customer or my, client going to be affected by viewing this on a different device. So, Jeff, you want to take it out?
Great, thank you, Lydia. Right now you're looking at a slide of different resources. These resources, obviously, if you click on the links now, you'll be able to access them. They will be available in the recording of an archive of this presentation as well, so you can click on them there. We had a couple of questions actually come in about a copy of the slides. In the top right-hand corner, in the important information box, there is a printable version of the presentation. It's that last link there. You can just click on that, and it'll open up a new tab in your browser and allow you to download those slides. All right. So as some of you have already found how to ask a question, for those that don't, we are going to hop into the Q&A segment here real quick, and your participation is key, so please don't be afraid to ask those questions. You can ask them one of two ways, simply by typing it into the webinar system on the lower right-hand side of that Q&A box and clicking the call-out button, or you can tweet your question using the hashtag ASAE webinar. All right, we have a few in here. This one for Lydia was actually a little bit ago, asking about when you were talking about removing a device. Just ask you can repeat about removing a device. It was when you were going through the code. Does that ring a bell?
Removing a device. They may be referring to the fact that the different media queries will refer to various device sizes or screen sizes. So if you only want to apply the rule to, very small devices, you could put a max width of, 300 pixels on your media query. That's all kind of controlled by those settings. I'm not exactly sure about removing a device.
Okay.
That's about as far as I can go with that.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. We have another question. Do you think it would be better to wait a little bit before update the website and also the emails to utilizing responsive design, considering it's still in an early stage?
No, I actually think it's better to go ahead and take the plunge now. Many sites and organizations already are, so if you can kind of get in as early as possible, I feel like it's going to be better. The foundation is already in place, so it's not really going to change that much. The media query is really what makes it possible. So if you go ahead and kind of start the process now, then as we move forward, the technologies that are a little bit more behind, like I was mentioning the Gmail app, hopefully those are going to kind of catch up over time. But definitely never wait for a technology to be 100% available, because it may just not happen. It's better to just kind of go ahead and get into it now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another person asked, we already have some existing templates. Can these be made responsive?
Yes, they can. Pretty much any existing template can be made responsive. Now, how much work and time it's going to take really depends on the specific template. So if I had a template that was one column and there weren't very many graphics, it was mostly text, it's just going to be so much simpler, because you saw how in our slides we had to take those media query rules and then apply them throughout our template. We also have to apply them to the images as well to make sure those images scale down. So the more content and the more columns you have, if you had a 2-column layout, you're going to have to try to reconfigure that into a 1-column layout. So it really depends on the complexity of the template, but it definitely can be made responsive.
Okay, great. We have a question here for Ron. User wants to know that they have constant contact. Do you think they already have a way to do this within their existing email templates?
What's great about responsive design, it's actually platform agnostic. So regardless of the email service provider you're using, whether it's Constant Contact or our platform or SilverPop or ExactTarget, basically it's really a function of the template. And so this method, this approach can work with any email service provider. So it's just, again, a function of the template itself. So what you'd want to do is download those templates. I don't think they're out-of-the-box responsive, the default templates that come with Constant Contact, but you could work with a design team and have them kind of reapproach the actual HTML constructs in it to make it responsive. Yeah.
Okay, great. Another question here, how would I test it on other devices? So if no one in my organization has, let's say, an Android device, how would I test that? And is there a way to do these testings? Is there a service where you can see how it's going to replicate on the different devices? Any words of wisdom there?
Yeah, Jeff, I'll jump in and take that one. There, here at HighRoad, there's a platform, a tool that we use, and again, it will work with any email service provider that you're using. And I actually recommend it because when you work with email service providers, they typically charge you a per report fee for this feature. It's a tool called Litmus. Basically, it allows you to test your emails very quickly and see how they render on a ton of different devices: mobile, Blackberries, iPhones, iPads, email, web-based email clients, desktop email clients. What I love about their model, they are not an email service provider. They provide tools to ESPs and marketers and agencies. It's basically an all-you-can-eat situation. You pay $49 a month, and you get as many of those reports as you want. They also have some additional functionality where you can say, okay, I want to see how this performs across 10 or 12 of the top spam filtering technologies. And something new that they're releasing, which is very, very cool, is they actually have a new tool that allows you to basically test all your links in your email without having to send yourself a test. What happens is you send the email to your Litmus account, and it automatically iterates through the 30, 40, 60 links you have, and it finds out which ones work, which ones are broken, and it highlights with an image heat map on top of the actual template. So they've got some great testing tools related to supporting your email platform, Litmus.
Okay, thanks, Ron. There are a couple more questions here, but we're running up against our allotted time. So want to, well, first of all, remind everyone about the next Lunch and Learn event on email deliverability basics. It'll be held on March 21st at the same time, noon to 12:30 Eastern Time. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in today's webinar, Mobile Email 101, brought to you by ASAE Business Services. A special thank you to our speakers, Ron McGrath and Lydia Roberts. Within the next few minutes, you will receive an evaluation form via email. Please take a moment and provide us your feedback. Or you can click the link in the resources box in the top right-hand corner to access the survey and tell us what you thought about today's sessions. If you have any additional questions or comments, please contact ASAE Business Services at endorsedsolutions@asaecenter.org. Today's sessions was recorded, and you will receive an email within the next few business days with a link to the webinar recording, as well as written answers to many of the questions that we are unable to answer today. Today's webinar is copyrighted by ASAE Business Services, Inc., with all rights reserved. This concludes today's program. Thank you, and you may now disconnect.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.